Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching and for listening, for following and subscribing. I appreciate y'all very much. This is our Wednesday episode, and as usual now, for the season, I am joined by Associate Director with the NFL, SB Nation, Matt Warren. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
We're doing okay over here. We're still doing okay.
We are doing okay. Look, we got a lot to get to today. Before we get into today's show, though, on a serious note, and I'm sure you feel the same as I do, our thoughts and our prayers are with Floridians today, getting ready for Hurricane Milton. I've been watching the news in Florida a lot over the past 24 hours or so. Quick story too, before we get into this to this show. So as you know, and a lot of people who listen and watch the show know that I lived in Florida. In fact, when I started this podcast back in 2018, I was actually living in Florida. I moved to Florida in 2016. I had spent pretty much my entire life here in Buffalo. We moved for a few reasons. My wife got a job promotion. It was a good opportunity for our son Shane to go down and play high school football in Florida. Anyway, so we go there in 2016, and I live on the Tampa side. We lived Sarasota, Bradenton area, which is on that west coast or Gulf Coast where Tampa is, about 45 minutes or so away. I remember doing a lot of research because I was nervous about hurricanes and stuff like that because, you know, we grew up on this coast and seeing hurricanes wipe out parts of Florida in the past. And I remember vividly reading up on that. And nothing really happens on the Tampa side. It's usually like the other side, the East Coast, the Miami side, Fort Lauderdale, that gets hit really hard with these. It had been like since Hurricane, I think Donna, like in the 1960s or something, since something significant came. Now you get tropical storms and stuff like that all the time on wherever you live in Florida, but nothing crazy. Anyway, so I go there in 2016. Less than a year later, Hurricane Irma comes to Florida. It is coming on that side. And I'll never forget that for a lot of reasons. Number one, it actually hit on a Sunday, and the Bills, ironically, were playing the New York Jets that week. I remember it very well. But besides the hurricane itself, the week leading up to it, it felt like almost like on Monday, Tuesday, like kind of like an adventure. We're going to hunker down. This is going to be crazy stuff. I grew up, you know, watching on the news. Not that I was excited. I was never excited about it.
Right.
But it was kind of like adventurous, you know, like whatever. We're going to be fine. People in Florida, apparently, you know, weather, they're just used to this shit. So it's not like that big of a deal to them. But as the week went on, Wednesday into Thursday and even Friday. Now, again, this happened on a Sunday afternoon when it actually landed here in Florida. I remember the tone changed. And a lot of people, it was the biggest evacuation in the history of the state. It turns out, Hurricane Irma back in 2017. And I remember watching on the news. We didn't try to leave, but cars were getting stranded on I-75 all over the place because it was bumper to bumper traffic. It was taking hours to move anywhere. People were running out of gas. There was no gas available in a lot of these places. Their stores were running out of gas. I remember going to like Walmart and Publix and stuff. No groceries pretty much to be had, no batteries, toilet paper, stuff like that. Like the mood got really ominous in the week later, just a couple days before it came, when it started to get real, like it was going to happen.
Yeah.
People going to shelters and schools and stuff like that weren't safe depending on where they lived, how close they were to the coast, and, you know, what kind of buildings they were living in. It's just, Matt, I remember how serious it got in those 48 hours or so leading up. And then I got scared. Again, never having experienced anything like this before.
Right.
Now, as it turns out, thank the Lord, at least where we lived in that area, it was just to bring in stuff. And our power never even went out. Now, other people got hit real hard, but
Right.
we did it where we lived. Anyway, this hurricane is going right at where I lived. in Sarasota, Bradenton. And I got dozens and dozens and dozens of friends. And I know a lot of them I'm still close to. In fact, some of them still listen and watch this show. They've told me they became Bills fans and stuff literally because of this show, and they support me. And I know some of them are watching. Yeah, but my thoughts and prayers are with them. I just remember, Matt, how scary it got. Like I said, 24, 48 hours when it was out and there was nothing available anywhere in any stores. It got really, and you couldn't leave because at that point, again, there was nowhere to drive because the roads were dead, or I should say the roads were too packed and people were running out of gas and shit. It was just a very scary time. And I'm sure a lot of people right now in Florida are feeling that calm before the storm, but it's not even calm anymore at this point.
Right. Yeah, no. And some of the folks I work with live in Atlanta, and they've got friends staying with them already who have evacuated from Florida. But yeah, that storm surge that's going to come into Tampa is going to be no joke. So they've already been hit pretty hard down there, and this is happening right on the heels of Helene.
Yeah.
It's just brutal.
It really is. I have this service. I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I have this TV service where I get local channels from all over the place in Sarasota, which again, I spent 6 years watching that TV or that station every day. So my eyes are glued to that. And I'm obviously hoping for the best. I know you are, and everybody who's watching this show as well. So thoughts and prayers with them. I sent you a message. We're recording this. I got to say this for a specific reason. Now, I sent you a message. We're recording this Tuesday. It's around 11-ish a.m. I said I'm a little bit nervous about recording this because I got a gut feeling something's going to happen after we record this. That seems to happen on Tuesdays. I get an episode in the can early on Tuesday, and then something goes down. Nothing's went down with the Bills as we record this. But if it does, you know that we recorded this early. However, something did go down with their next opponent, Monday Night Football, shortly before we started taping this. Saleh is out with the New York Jets. Kind of a shock firing. Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, is in. We'll talk about that more on later and how it affects, potentially this game with the Bills. But pretty shocking news here on a Tuesday morning for sure.
Yeah, the Jets, well, at least Woody Johnson's never fired a coach during the season, and that includes Rex Ryan and a whole bunch of other guys. So, I mean, Adam Gase, for the love of God, like he never fired any of them during the season. So this is something of uncharted territory for them. I guess he thinks that the Jets are ready to win now. But unless it certainly wasn't the defense that, caused this. It was the offense. So I don't really see the logic of it, but that's fine. Yeah. They're just grasping at straws right now.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you get that short-term boost. They know they got to win this game. If the Jets lose to the Bills at home and they're 2-4, they're essentially, I think they're done. And I think they know that. So I'm sure, among other reasons, head coach Aaron Rodgers did not like Robert Saleh. So, but they know they got to win this game. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Yep. One of the primary things that I wanted to discuss on today's show, which we'll get into shortly, are some potential trade candidates at wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. I want to hear some of your thoughts, some players that you think they could be targeting. I got a couple thoughts of my own on that. I think one thing that we can all agree on at this point, maybe on different levels, it might vary, but the Bills got to do something at wide receiver. I like Khalil Shakir a lot. He's a good player, a very good player, underrated player, but he can't possibly be that important to this passing game that when he's out, we saw what we saw on Sunday. They got to do something. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. For that, though, let me ask you this right now. All right, so the Bills lose a close game in Houston. I don't know that they win the game if things play out differently over the last minute or so. Who knows what happens if they get to overtime? One thing I think everyone could agree on is that it should have went to overtime. But anyway, regardless, what's your confidence level right now with Sean McDermott and the coordinators right now? And it's just weird because 3 weeks in, I ask you this question, it's probably sky high. It was for me. I'm not out on Sean McDermott by any means right now, but this was just another in the latest of, last minute gaffes against good competition. But anyway, what's your thoughts right now? Like, what's your confidence level in this head coach and this staff right now?
Yeah, I'm never going to be a Sean McDermott apologist. I mean, even all the way back to the Snowvertime game where he punted in overtime, and I thought he cost the Bills the playoffs right there and then. But
Sure.
you know, I've always been critical of his end of game decisions, just like those especially the clock management decisions over the years. Um, I questioned this one at the time, and I'm not like, a results based guy. Like when the Bills got the ball, I said they should probably run it into the line 3 times or take 3 knees. They couldn't take 3 knees after it was down inside the 5. But like, I thought that the Bills should try to get to overtime as easily as possible. And I think what we've seen after like doing some lip reading and all this other stuff was they were just trying to get one first down so
Yeah.
that they could run out the clock. But then, like, why are they pushing the ball down the field so much if they're just trying to get a first down? Like, I don't think there was any way that they were going to be able to get into field goal range for a long Tyler Bass kick. So that's why I thought that they should be playing for overtime. And I guess they were by putting the ball in Josh Allen's hand to get a first down. But then I don't think that the play call / Josh Allen decisions necessarily reflected that they were trying to run off the clock to get to overtime. So a lot of confusing stuff at the end there. So, I mean, I think Sean McDermott, and I've said this repeatedly, is a great coach for 6 days and 21 hours of the week, but I don't know how great he is during an actual game. And then for, Bobby Babich and Joe Brady, if I think the results were flipped and they had two kind of bad games coming out of the gate, and then they went on a 3-game win streak, I think Bills fans would feel a little bit differently. But like, this is what we knew was going to happen, and I just think we're seeing. So when we talk about the wide receivers, we're going to have that same conversation. Like, this is what we expected: inconsistency. When they can come out and do whatever they want for the first 3 weeks, and now defenses are adjusting to Joe Brady and what the Bills have been able to do on offense, scheming guys open. We're seeing the same, well, sort of the same thing with the defense. I think the defense is more based on injuries rather than like Bobby Babich being bad at what he does. But like, I don't think Joe Brady's been bad at what he does either. I just think that defenses are starting to catch up now that they've got more film. And so we're seeing that inconsistency of, a guy who just took over this offseason. And then for Bobby Babich, a guy that's calling the defense really for the first time. So that inconsistency is what we kind of expected going into this year. So I don't think any of us should be surprised that we're seeing it now after 5 games.
Let me start by talking about that last minute or so of the game on Sunday. It's kind of a shared blame in a way. Joe Brady deserves some blame for calling a pass play. Although I think of the 3, he actually deserves the least amount of play or blame, I should say, because the goal was to get a first down. Okay.
Right.
But you call a pass play, and then Josh Allen, you gave him an opportunity to go hero ball and not take the short stuff. By calling any kind of pass play where there's multiple options, Josh wasn't dumping it off. He was going for a bigger play. That's obviously on Josh, but it's kind of like you didn't save Josh from himself by calling a pass play, which ultimately makes me go back to Sean McDermott. You got to say, I'm going to kill you if you don't run this football, and then you look at the play too, by the way, on first down. So it's like, well, you try to run it out, but who's to say they run it, they're successful in running the ball. Houston's got all their timeouts. That is true. But I will say this. The Bills, I like the way they came out from their own. They had a spread formation, which put Houston in a light box. I thought for sure they were spreading it out so Houston doesn't stack the box, and then they hand it off to Cy Johnson. At least on first, because Cy Johnson was in the game. At least on first down, see what happens. You pick up 4, 5, 6 yards. You go from there. If he busts one and happens to get out of bounds after a 15-yard gain, then we'll see what happens with the offense. But yeah, to throw it 3 times, that's on Brady for allowing Josh to do something stupid. He didn't save Josh from himself there. And then ultimately, that's on Sean. Now, that's this specific game. I'm not very high on him at the moment to answer the question that I asked you. See, this happens too often. This week, obviously, you talked about November, the game. You talked about, 13 seconds, self-explanatory. You go back to last year. I feel like he kind of blew the Denver game at the end. The Philly game,
Yep.
You can blame on him at the end. This happens too often. And when it comes to Sean, what's kind of pissing me off a little bit, I tweeted about this on Monday. I am getting really sick and tired of hearing Sean McDermott Take accountability for something, which I do respect that much, but then say we'll learn from it. I'm tired of hearing, like, we'll learn from it, to me, is becoming the new trust the process when it comes to a Sean McDermott staple saying. I'm getting really sick of hearing it. You're in your 8th year as a head coach. Stop making these stupid mistakes and saying that you'll learn from it. At what point do you not have to learn anymore? You know what I mean? You can't make those mistakes. So I'm not very high on him. And I'm also not very high right now on Joe Brady. And I know I'm knee-jerk reacting, by the way. The Bills have lost 2 in a row. And they have not looked very good on offense the last 2 weeks against 2 good opponents. I know I'm overreacting, okay? So it's not like I'm being naive here, but my big issue with Joe Brady is, even if you take the wins, all 5 games right now, that's not a tiny sample size anymore, Matt. And look, MBS and Matt Collins, I think they stink. So let's not even talk about them, okay? But I'm concerned that Joe Brady is known since March that Curtis Samuel is a Buffalo Bill. He's had 6 months to scheme stuff for this guy, and he's getting 0 out of him. He's getting 0 out of $10 million a year Dawson Knox as well. I mean, how are you getting nothing from Curtis Samuel and Dawson Knox, both of them 5 games into the season? Statistically, Josh Allen, he's only on pace to throw for about 3,200 yards this year, which is 1,100 less than last year. 27 touchdowns he's on pace for passes, which would be his lowest since 2019. So a little concerned about him. I'm very high on Bobby Babbage still. I really do think that's injuries. He's had a lot of success in everything he's done with the Bills through the years. I think that defense, which played pretty well, all things considered, in Houston, they played good 4 of the 5 games this year. It's injuries. Get Moran back. Get Ed Oliver, didn't play this week. Taylor Rapp didn't play this week. I'm fine on him. That kind of makes sense with Joe Brady. It's like, how are you not getting nothing from Curtis Samuel and from Dawson Knox at this point of the season, which, again, we're 5 games in now?
Mm-hmm. No, I don't disagree with you, especially the Samuel stuff. Like, they obviously signed him to be an important part of this offense, and they can't get anything to him. Even when they schemed stuff up specifically for him in this game against the Texans, it went nowhere, or worse, like it went backwards. So I've got a big question mark over that Curtis Samuel, whether it's the signing that you want to disagree with or his utilization that you want to disagree with. There's something amiss here. And I don't think it's a turf toe. I keep hearing like, oh, well, he had the turf toe. Like, that was in training camp. He hasn't been on an injury report since training camp.
Sure.
He doesn't look like he's hobbled to me or slow to me. It just looks like, for whatever reason, the 3, 4, 5 people that need to be in sync to get him some actual like play in this offense aren't in sync on that.
Every time he touches the ball, it's within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage so far, it seems like this season. And look, just even last couple of years in Washington with garbage quarterbacks, he had 62 and 64 catches. It's 77 receptions, I believe, with Carolina under Joe Brady in 2020. It just doesn't make sense to me. And how Dawson Knox can only have 3 catches for 30 yards in 5 games, it's bananas to me.
He's getting a lot of snaps too. Like, I mean, he's playing a lot. It's just they're using him more as a blocker, obviously, than going out into passing routes. But I mean, just the number of snaps he's playing. I mean, you saw the Chiefs on Monday Night Football utilize 3, sometimes 4 tight ends to create, because their wide receiver room is in shambles right now with all the injuries that they've had. The Bills can't use their 2, big name tight ends the way that the Chiefs are using theirs, or even like look at the Ravens with their 2 tight ends. I mean, obviously Andrews has been kind of like sidelined this year, but like they're using multiple tight end sets and getting like folks involved without like a great wide receiver game. So they got to figure that out at some point. I mean, they have an extra day this week. They had extra time between the Dolphins game and the Jaguars game. Yeah, they had like the week and a half from Thursday to Monday. Like, they've had time to do this. And so even after like looking at what's going on this season, at some point they have to, like, this has to click in, or else like they're really going to get sunk unless they make a move, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
We're about to talk about that right now, actually. I don't know if it's coming this week. I would not anticipate it coming this week. I know you don't either. But again, I am just going to warn for a second time now that we are recording this on Tuesday relatively early. So if some does happen and you're listening to this on Wednesday, know that we recorded this ahead of time. It was disturbing to me to see this this wide receiving group without Khalil Shakir on Sunday. I watched the All 22, and I'm telling you, Matt, look, I say it all the time. I'm no expert either. I'm not Joe Marino. I'm not Bruce Nolan. I'm not some of the guys who cover one. I'm not going to be able to dissect a lot of little things that they're so great at doing. But I can tell when a receiver's open and when he's not. And other than these little 2 or 3 yard hitch routes, there was just way too often these guys are just not getting open, which leads to Josh Allen doing some kind of crazy shit because what else is he going to do? Guys aren't open and he doesn't want to throw a pick. With or without Khalil Shakir, I think we're all at the point now where we know that the Bills are going to need another wide receiver. Sometimes you got to cut your losses. And Brandon Beane this offseason between MVS and Matt Collins, who's just playing way too much. Sean McDermott on Monday sort of alluded to that, calling him, a special teams guy and play some offense, and we got to figure that out better. Basically, what he's saying is this dude is way too important on this offense right now, especially on Sunday. I mean, that was painful at times to watch him out there. Anyway, those guys and Samuel just not getting it done. They need to go get another receiver. And that's even with Shakir, and that's even with Keon Coleman flashing and doing some things. They need another guy. I think we can all agree on that. The question is, who? So I kind of tasked you with a little bit of homework here. I call it homework. And I want you to go over a few guys that you think are potential wide receiving trade candidates for the Bills, whether it's very realistic, whether it's moderately or maybe even not realistic at all. What do you think? I got some comments too, but I want to hear from you. What are you thinking?
Yeah, the one that obviously folks are talking about the most is Devontae Adams because he's already requested a trade. We already know he's available. I don't necessarily think Adams fits with the Bills. He's too old. He makes a ton of money. The Raiders would have to eat a bunch of salary just to make it work. Why would you move on from an aging, unhappy, overpriced receiver just to trade for another one? I'd rather have Stephon Diggs than Devontae Adams personally. And so it would be like that kind of knee-jerk reaction that I don't think Brandon Beane's going to necessarily be known for. Amari Cooper makes sense to me. He's cheap, but it would be that 1 year rental. DeAndre Hopkins is another name that's kind of on the trade market, but he's another 1 year rental, and he's, I guess, tore his MCL earlier, like the offseason, and he's just playing through it, and everyone's okay with this. They're getting to a couple I actually would love to see happen, like George Pickens from the Steelers, I guess, was benched in week 5. Could be a trade candidate. I don't really think so. I think the Steelers are looking to add a wide receiver, not subtract a wide receiver. So maybe if they were able to get Devontae Adams, maybe that opens up George Pickens for a trade. But if he's having problems with Mike Tomlin, I don't necessarily think he's going to get along with Sean McDermott either. So maybe we're not talking about George Pickens in that role. Deontay Johnson from the Panthers is, a nice looking option. He's only a 1 year rental. And that's typically not what Brandon Beane is traded for. I mean, you think of Rasul Douglas and even Kelvin Benjamin had a year and a half left on their deals when Beane traded for them. But he's 28, has a 1,000-yard season. The Panthers need draft capital because they traded it all away for their bust quarterback. He's got the financials to make it work. I think that would be a decent one. The one that I really have sort of taken a liking to is Jacoby Myers with the Raiders. But if the Raiders trade Devontae Adams, they need someone to catch passes from their quarterback next year, whoever they draft. And so, but Myers has a year left on his deal. The financials work. He's able to create separation. He's a guy that I really like. I just don't know if the Raiders would be willing to move on from him. And then the last guy on my list that's realistic, because I'm just going to throw Tyreek Hill out. I don't think that Tyreek Hill is a realistic trade option. But Christian Kirk from the Jacksonville Jaguars, if the Jaguars decide to blow it up. But again, I think that's a couple weeks away. The trade deadline's on Election Day, beginning of November. So, we got almost a month left before that. And so if the Jaguars, lose their next 3 games, and they're sitting way on the outside looking in. They fired their head coach, Doug Peterson, like something like that. I could see the Jaguars moving on from a guy like Christian Kirk for the right price. And like, because he's young, he's 28. They're not like calling people asking to trade Christian Kirk. They're going to be taking offers, and so the price is going to go up. So that list is, there's a lot of different types of receivers on there. There's old guys, there's younger guys, there's separators, there's folks that maybe are more contested catch guys. But all of those are like outside wide receivers that they could use opposite of Keon Coleman in place of a guy like Mac Hollins, who shouldn't be on the field for whatever it is, 70% of the snaps, I think it is. Let me look.
Let me
63% of the snaps.
Yeah. Let me take let's do this. I want to take a real quick break. I'm going to come back. Okay. I want to unpack a lot of what you just said, because there's a lot of interesting names, and I think some do definitely make more sense than others, and a couple general principles I feel like we're at when it comes to the Bills and Brandon Beane and making a trade. So quick break, come back right after this, and we'll continue potential wide receiver trade candidates. Okay, I'm back here with Matt Warren, SB Nation. All right, so you just went over a bunch of potential trade candidates. I'll say this, and we talked a little bit this morning before we even recorded, and you said something and it resonated with me for sure. Deadlines spur action, and you're 100% right. That said, if I'm Brandon Beane, I don't. What am I waiting for? Other than the fact that maybe a couple of these guys that you've hit on, and I got a couple of thoughts as well, maybe they're not available right now, but they're another week or two away. Like if that team's another loss or two away from their GM concluding that they're buried, and then maybe at that point, they might be more willing to deal. The price might be too high right now, but nothing's going to change in terms of the need between whether it's today or whether it's 3 weeks from now. MBS is not going to be anything more than what he is. Ditto for Mac Hollins. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. But it's the price, and it's the team that they're trying to trade with, their willingness to part with somebody that might matter. I'll say this. Of all the guys you mentioned, he's the biggest name, and he's still the best player. But I am not even spending. I'm stupid, but I'm not stupid enough to say never. So I'll never say never with Devontae Adams. But I am 3% expecting that at the most. I just don't think it's going to happen. Everything you said, his age, his contract, it just doesn't fit what the Bills are looking to do. And the cost. And if they're going to eat, first of all, if they don't eat the money, the Raiders, the Bills financially can't afford them. And if they do eat the money, you're talking about prime. You're giving up more than what you got to trade for trade away Stephon Diggs. You're giving up that second. You're giving up probably more to get Devontae Adams because the Raiders are going to eat that salary. I just don't consider that realistic whatsoever. Amari Cooper is the guy that I really like. He's 30 years old. It would cost like under $800,000 to get him now. He's a rental guy, but he's been good this year, and there's not a lot of good things to say about their offense, the Cleveland Browns offense. I mean, it's mostly pathetic, but he's still a playmaker, but he's literally a rental, not really up Brandon Beane's alley. But, and this is where I think Brandon Beane needs to change his mindset. All offseason, Matt, it was about transition, and we're trying to win now, but we're all in for the future. But I think during the offseason, and maybe we probably thought this, maybe even Brandon did as well. The Jets to Miami, those are two really good teams. They're going to be good. There were a lot of people who were saying the Bills were the second or even the third best team in the AFC East, let alone the conference. The expectations weren't that high. But now we're in week 6, and this is a weak division. I still, even though Miami beat New England, I think Miami's done. I think they're toast. Way too many injuries and issues, not to mention who the hell is going to play quarterback. Does Tua come back? Is he one hit away? Is he going to be any good when he does? I think Miami's done. The Jets, even with a new head coach, I still think that team, they got an old, banged up, shitty attitude quarterback whose best days are way, way gone. I wanted to say their head coach sucks, but now they don't have him anymore. But the Jets are in trouble. I think the Bills are the best team in the division. That's what I'm getting at here. And you got a great chance to win your division, get in the playoffs, get a home playoff game, go from there. At this point, maybe in March or April, you weren't going to pay any kind of real price to go get an Amari Cooper for 1 year. But now, where you're at right now in this season and where you're at in your division, I think that it better be in play. It better be in play for somebody like Amari Cooper. Do you agree with that now? Like maybe Brandon Beane's mindset should be different now in October than it probably was all off season, because I feel like the expectations of this football team right now today are different than what they were a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean, like I kept saying, like I don't think that anything we've seen is weird or different. What you're saying is it's not that the Bills' expectations have changed; it's that the division expectations around them have changed. And
Sure.
I think that's
True.
fair. We've seen Brandon Beane get a little bit jittery as far as like, whether it's trading up to get a guy that he really covets or, making one of those, deadline deals. We know that he's willing to make those trades. And so it wouldn't shock me that he's like looking at trading like even like a third round pick or a fourth round pick. I hope he doesn't trade the second round pick, but that's just me probably more than anyone else. But like if we can get another addition to the wide receiver room, we don't necessarily need to get that alpha guy. We don't need the number one Devontae Adams guy. Like they
Sure.
knew that they were going to take a step back this year. Like at some point, you have to just be comfortable in that decision that you made back in, whether it was January when they were eliminated or in March or April when like all that stuff went down. But you have to like be comfortable sitting in your skin and knowing that this is going to be sort of a reset year when you have so much of your salary cap tied up with players that aren't on your team, because of the trades or because of the releases that they made, because of the decisions that they made way back in March, like that, you have to just be comfortable sitting in that. And I don't know, we haven't seen that for Brandon Beane. It's obviously new territory for
Right.
him, going from team building to team management. With the salary cap and the roster and all that stuff. So it would not surprise me at all to get one of these like rental players in. He did it with Rasul Douglas. He did it with Kelvin Benjamin. He's done it before to try to solidify a position when he sees that there's a chance to make the playoffs. Even back in 2017, when it was obviously not really expected at all. And like to your point, like stuff changed around them. And so they went for it. It didn't work out, but like the Kelvin Benjamin didn't really work, but they still did it. Like
I will not criticize. Oh, I will. I tell you, you know what? That's all right. I was going to say I will not criticize Brandon Beane if he makes a trade and it doesn't work out this season with the receiver, but that's a lie. I will criticize him, but I will respect him for maybe being more aggressive because, again, I think the expectations, you were right, by the way. It's the division where the expectations have changed. Not necessarily that the Bills are all that much better than what we expected them to be, but I think the division is a lot worse than what we expected it to be. It's there for the taking. And if you can go at a player, you do it. You said a couple names that really resonate with me and stick out, and two of them specifically. One of them is Jacoby Myers. He's 28 years old, and he's also under contract next year, too. His cap hit, I looked it up, it's like about $10.5 million next year. That's not as much as it sounds like for a guy who can give you what he gives you. I mean, he's got 25 catches for 273 yards and a touchdown already this year with the Raiders. My problem, to your point, is they're going to trade Devontae Adams. That's happening. He's gone, and he probably will be a New York Jet. In fact, I just hope he's not a New York Jet this week, which could happen. But let's just say that hopefully that doesn't. If you trade Adams and Myers, aren't you pretty much tanking at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, what do they got on offense? I mean, they got Brock Bowers. He's a nice player, but they got crap at quarterback. You know what I mean? With Minshew and O'Connell. So they kind of stink there. But yeah, you're pretty much a tank. If you trade away Adams, I get that. If you trade away Adams and Myers,
yeah,
you're tanking. You're straight up.
It's not just tanking this year. Like if we've seen what it takes to develop, a young quarterback.
Sure.
And so if you're trading both Adams and Myers, who are both under contract next year, and then Adams has another year after that of team control. I mean, it's like $35 million to keep Adams for one season after this. So that seems steep for a guy his age, but that's neither here nor there. If you're drafting a quarterback in the top 10 and surrounding him with just a tight end and nobody else, it's like, you probably need to add some wide receivers into that room, and Myers is a good enough wide receiver where I think the Raiders should want to keep him. So that's why I think it's like probably not going to happen. But
Sure.
I like him. I like it like in a vacuum. I like him. Like,
I would love for him to be a Buffalo Bill. I think he would be a great fit. And the other guy I would think would be a great fit, potentially, at least anyway, that you mentioned is Deontay Johnson. He's 28 years old, around $4.5 million for this year, which again, the Bills can make that work. He's the need and the fit to me of all these guys that could help the most right now. His production, and even with Carolina, is pretty much what Myers has been with the Raiders. 23 catches, 262 yards so far this season. But he'll be an unrestricted free agent after this season. I don't want to steal from someone else who came up with this phrase. I want to make sure I give credit to Joe Biscaglia from The Athletic. He had an article about potential receivers, which I read. And he said with somebody like Deontay Johnson, it could be a try before you buy. It sounds really good. If things don't work out great, whatever, you go into the free agent market. But he's the guy, unlike some of these others, like say Amari Cooper, who's 30 years old. He's the kind of guy where he still can be that guy. He could be a superstar type receiver. He could have great chemistry with Josh Allen, and that might be a marriage that could work for a handful of years to come. So I just, and again, with the position he plays as a receiver, I just think that fit and his skill set would complement what else they have on this roster right now perfectly. Let me ask you this. Cooper, Myers, Johnson. Again, I'm not going to say Devontae Adams, so let's exclude him. The other guys, realistically, all right, now I'm saying realistically, we would love to give up, if you're Brandon Beane, a 7th round pick. That's not going to happen. Realistically, what would you be willing to give up to go get, whether it's Myers or Johnson or Cooper? Because I think they're all in the same relative skill set. Johnson and Cooper are free agents after this year. You still get Myers for a second year. What would you think compensation wise you'd be willing to go get one of those 3 guys?
I mean, the Bills do have the extra second round pick, so it makes it a little bit easier to part with the 3rd rounder for me. Because they'll still have 3 picks in the first 2 days of the draft. Ideally, I wouldn't go past the 4th round pick, or I would give up the 4th rounder to grab one of those wide receivers. I don't know necessarily, like, when you go around the league and see what receivers are going for. I thought the Bills got a great return when they got a 2nd round pick for Stephon Diggs, when essentially the Texans are only using him for 1 year after their contract restructure, and the Bills still got a 2nd round pick out of him. You're going to see the 4th, 5th, 6th rounders like being bandied about for some of these players, and so I'm comfortable with all of that stuff. If you get up into that either 2nd round pick, I think that's too steep for me, because I don't think any of them have the perfect mixture of salary and years and all that stuff. Maybe Pickens, I could see trading, one of those 2nd rounders for, because he's so young and on his rookie deal. He put up 1,100 yards with those 3 quarterbacks that Pittsburgh had last year. He's obviously super talented, and the team has more control over him. So he might be the only one where I would go up to a 2nd round pick for, but the rest of them, we're talking 3rd or 4th rounder, maybe.
Pickens concerns me. Not his talent.
Well, yeah. Right.
He's they saw some clips. So there was a lack of effort there at times. He's had some attitude issues going all the way back to college at Tennessee. I'd be
grab the dude at the end of the game, grab the guy's face mask and shook it or whatever it was.
Yeah. He's got the skills for sure, but I'd be a little wary because of the other stuff. What would you say for somebody like Johnson or Myers, for sure? I don't know about Cooper, but at least those first 2, if you were to do a pick swap, I don't want to give up a straight 2nd round pick, but let's just say you're willing to move that Minnesota 2nd round pick that you have, which, by the way the Vikings are looking, that's looking like it's going to be a very late pick in round 2. Say you go to Carolina for Johnson, you're willing to do a 2 for a 4 swap. Probably ends up being about a 35 to 40 pick swap. A Bills late 2nd for an early Carolina 4th. Something like that. That's the kind of thing I feel like maybe can. I mean, the Bills did it with Russell Douglas. They swapped a third for a fifth, and that's how they got Russell. Can you see a scenario like that where, hey, give you our second, and I want your fourth? Because both, again, whether it's Myers with Vegas, whether it's Johnson with Carolina, or hell, Cooper with Cleveland, we'll throw them in there too. They're awful, the Browns this year. About a 35, maybe a 40 pick difference. Are you willing to pay that price to get one of those three guys?
Yeah, and I think Brandon Beane loves his draft picks, and so keeping the same number of picks while adding a player, I think, would be appealing to him. I don't know those trade values off the top of my head, like how much it would be worth, but like that's probably right in the range. Like trading that late second for the early fourth is like that type of draft value. Yeah,
and you still got your second round pick. Put it this way: here's what I'm going to tell you with confidence. If this team is not full of shit, if Sean McDermott is not full of shit, and they truly are confident in this room, and they do nothing at wide receiver before the trade deadline, you're going to see a very pissed off Talking Buffalo host here, because I will not be happy. It will be unacceptable to me for the Bills to not go out and add somebody, especially when you know other teams are going to do it. I guarantee you, I know Juju had a big night with the Chiefs on Monday night, but they're getting somebody. The Jets, they're going to probably get Devontae Adams. A couple other teams are probably going to make some moves. The Bills got a lot of draft capital, and they're in good cap shape. And again, they are the best team in their division. If they don't do something to upgrade a wide receiver, it's going to piss me off. And it don't necessarily have to be that big one like that. DeAndre Hopkins is a guy I keep coming back to just because I think he can help. He's not going to be a savior. None of these guys are going to be a savior, but 32 years old, you can afford him for the rest of the year. You're probably only giving up a fifth or a sixth to get him near the deadline. His skills are not what they were. But again, are you comparing him to DeAndre Hopkins from 4 years ago, or are you comparing him to Matt Collins, who we just saw on Sunday? You know what I mean? He's a guy who can help your team. Romeo Doubs, who knows what's going on with him in Green Bay? He's kind of like Pickens to me in a way. Like, I got a little bit of, I'm concerned about anybody that young who's got some issues with their team beyond what happens on the field. But he's not an explosive player, but he's a guy. I don't hate the thought of that. Darius Slayton from the Giants.
I asked our Packers blogger.
What's up?
I asked her. Funny you should bring both those guys up. I asked our Packers blogger about Dobbs, and he says that he doubts that the Packers are going to trade him. I talked to our Giants blogger, and he said that Slayton's better than he gets credit for. I think the Giants would trade Slayton if they're terrible. He's in the last year of his deal, but they aren't terrible. And Slayton and Daniel Jones have been together for 6 years, so they're going to listen. But he doesn't think they're going to trade it. Like we keep saying about a lot of these teams, unless the wheels completely fall off. If the Giants are still in the NFC East race in a few weeks, like there's no reason for them to trade Slayton. They could just like have him leave and get a comp pick for him the following year or something like that. But I talked to both of those bloggers about those guys.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, Slayton's intriguing, but you're right. The Giants just went on the road to beat Seattle this week, and Daniel Jones is finally playing well. So why would you want to go get rid of one of his receivers when you're finally starting to get what you were hoping to get out of the quarterback? The last thing you want to do is trade any of his weapons. And I think they're good enough to be on the outskirts of a race this year. Like, they're not the Browns. They're not toast already this season. By the way, when you said
I think the Commanders are going to come back to earth a little bit too. Like they're going to get more tape, some more tape on them. Like they can't be that consistently great.
No, for sure. By the way, I did giggle on the inside when you said Tyreek Hill. Just can you imagine that? It'd be fun. Oh my God, though, how fun would that be?
He did not look happy the other day. So you're just kind of like, maybe he doesn't want to be in Miami anymore. But like, no, I mean, they obviously gave him a bunch of money this offseason.
They gave him a bunch of money, and they're not trading him to the Buffalo Bills. It's kind of like I don't feel like Devontae Adams is going to go to the Chiefs. Like, why would the Raiders ever want to help the Chiefs? One last name too I want to throw out there before we move on and wrap up here. Demarcus Robinson. He's 30 years old. He's with the Rams. Again, another rental guy. He reminds me kind of an Emmanuel Sanders type player. Like, again, he wouldn't come here. He wouldn't change things all that much. but I'm setting the bar at, again, MVS,
Matt Collins.
Matt Collins. And I'm telling you, it's Samuel at this point, too. I almost feel like he's a borderline lost cause for this season. Anyway, those guys are, everyone we talked about is an upgrade over them. So that's what matters. And I do like Shakir, and he does matter in this offense. And the Bills' offense is better when Khalil Shakir's out there. But I still think they need another guy. So hopefully it's one of these guys that we talked about, or at this point, honestly, anybody. Because when that trade deadline passes, if I see Matt Collins out there getting the first pass rep, I'm telling you, I'm probably going to lose it, man. And I'm going to start to question the true commitment that this team has to try to win a Super Bowl this year, because you can't sell me that you're trying to win a Super Bowl this year when there's guys out there and you got a lot of draft capital and cap space for next year and you don't make a move. It will bother me. A good segue, by the way, before we get out of here. It's just an incredibly underwhelming so far 2024 Brandon Beane offseason class. A lot of people thought the Bills would take a step back, Matt, because of what they lost. But that's not really the case. Trey White was a healthy scratch on Sunday for the Rams. Unfortunately, he's cooked. Jordan Poyer's hurt, and I love Jordan Poyer. I've said this a million times. One of my favorite Bills of all time. He's hot garbage at this point. He's just not any good anymore. He's too slow. The Bills moved on from him at the right time. And again, that's coming from somebody who is a big Poyer fan. Gabe Davis has not mattered at all in Jacksonville. Mitch Morse has been fine. But Connor McGovern's been fine at center. Leonard Floyd's got 2 sacks for the 49ers this year. None of those guys are moving the needles where they are. Stephon Diggs has been good with Houston. 31 catches he's got this year, 215 yards. Side question. If you know and then what you know, didn't know now, would you have kept Stephon Diggs and dealt with any bullshit headaches or whatever for one more year? If you would have known the Bills are going to be 3-2, everybody ate for 3 weeks, but people are just getting crumbs for the last 2 weeks. If you can go back in time, but now you're going to lose that second rounder you got next year. Would you keep Stephon Diggs, or would you still have made that same move?
I like the timing of it just because they got such a prime asset for him. Getting that second round pick back was a really big deal. Obviously, another year older. I think they're getting more like a third or a fourth round pick for him, and they're not getting the cap savings and all this other stuff. So I still would I still like the trade. I still like the decision on the trade, and I don't have to deal with him every single day in the building. And so, if they made the move because they're dealing with him every single day, then I think all signs point to yes, you would keep making that trade.
I agree 100%. When you eat in an additional $3 million in cap space or dead cap space this year to get rid of a guy that you're getting draft capital for next year, that tells you that there's, not that it's all his fault, so we'll be clear about that, but there's issues in that locker room that were unrepairable at that point. But anyway, he's been good. And then the other guy they lost was Dotson, and he's fine. But you know what? Dorian Williams is fine too. So again, no loss there whatsoever. So it's not the losses that have hurt the Bills. It's what has been brought in that has not helped the Bills whatsoever. Matt Collins, no explanation needed right now at this point. MVS, useless. Curtis Samuel, he shouldn't be useless. He's a decent player, good player, but he's been useless for the Bills through 5 weeks now. Mike Edwards, he played 1 snap on Sunday. He was inactive for 3 weeks before that. Useless. Nick Morrow, he played 1 series against the Ravens, and he was exposed, and that was it for him. Useless. Juwan Smith's he's coming on. He was injured early in the year. He did have a big play in Houston. He's fine. I think he's adequately replacing Floyd minus the sacks. I mean, he's not getting, Floyd got a lot of sacks early in the year. But anyway, he's been all right. Casey Hill, Austin Johnson, whatever. You know what I'm saying? He's the 4th defensive tackle now on this team. I just read off to you pretty much the free agent class. That's not good. It's not good.
Even the re-signing guys. So AJ Epinesa, Daquan Jones, some of the guys that they brought back. We'll say Mitch Trubisky. It was an extended re-signing. Mitch Trubisky comes in for 1 play. I thought he did a great job handing off. Great. No, just jokes. But we knew that the signings were going to be underwhelming. I think the Samuel signing has been really, really bad, and that really sets off the entire conversation, like especially when you start looking at like the Von Miller signing and the Dawson Knox signing and like some of these other
Sure.
mistakes. I know those weren't this year, but like all of those are compounding, and like they haven't really had like that huge swing that actually landed in the last year or so. Like as far as like free agent signings, like what's the free agent signing from this year that's like gonna make a difference or has made a difference? Like I don't think we've seen one that is really like going
No.
to be a big deal. Matt Collins, I mean, just because he's been playing so much, I don't know, I guess.
Smoot's been their best free agent signing, and he only made basically one play against,
Yeah.
Well, he looked good against you. Look, I got no issues with Smoot. I think he's getting healthier now, and he'll be okay. But yeah, there's just, look, it's not like you took big money swings. It's not like you tried to land a Devontae Adams and it's not working out. I mean, these are guys that your expectations should not have been too high for, except for Curtis Samuel, you're paying $8 million a year for, and he's got 9 catches for 47 yards in 5 games. I mean, that's brutal. I thought Mike Edwards, I said this, I've said this a couple times on the show now the last few days. I'll say it again though. Like, I'm like, is he an idiot or something? Does he not understand the playbook? I can't figure out why he's not even getting a look in this defense over DeMar Hamlin. I don't want to go on that. Save me from the DeMar Hamlin diatribe. I can't do it again, man. But why is this guy not even getting a look?
If you go all the way back to last year's draft, and like really the one impact signing since then has been Leonard Floyd. He had one really nice season. If you go back, toward like last February, you're not even talking about too many. Like, I mean, maybe Connor McGovern. I mean, he's done fine, I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess we'll give that a win.
Good.
We'll give that a win.
That's a W.
Yeah. So you're talking about 2 free agents over the course of the last 2 years that you would call a W. Like, that's not great.
No, it's not. You know what's funny? You have these type of conversations, and it's not that we're intentionally being negative. Let's, again, keep perspective. The Bills are 3-2. The Bills are in first place in the AFC East, and the Bills are the best team in the AFC East. I want to make sure that we get back to that. But we've talked today about a wide receiving unit that stinks, and they need a guy. We're talking about an incredibly underwhelming free agent class. We are talking about a head coach who's blowing games. You hear all this stuff, and it truly makes you realize how special Josh Allen is. When you have a quarterback like Josh Allen or a Pat Mahomes or Joe Burrow, for the most part, even though he might be a bad example for this season, but Lamar Jackson, great quarterbacks will help you hide so many other deficiencies, or at least not even hide, but overcome so many other deficiencies. Like, this is a football team where if they had an okay quarterback, they probably would be a middling team at best. But when you got Josh Allen, it just, again, it really overcomes so many other things that are wrong. And Brandon Beane has been good in spots. He's done a lot of good things. He's hit on some really good draft picks over the last handful of years. Guys like James Cook, Christian Benford, who might be one of the best corners in the NFL, by the way, gets him in the 6th round. Teron Johnson in the 4th. Milano. No, I can't give him Matt Milano. Won't go there with Matt. But anyway, there's a lot of good picks that he's made. He's re-signed, he's made a lot of smart extensions, things like that as well. So a lot of good he's done. It's just not a good class, this offseason class. Rookies to be determined. It's too early. Coleman, flashing. Bishop looks lost, but he's a 2nd-round rookie who missed a lot of camp. Dwayne Carter impressed the hell out of me on Sunday, which is good because I thought he was nothing the first 3 weeks.
He had a really nice game.
Yeah. Ray Davis, I really thought he was going to make a bigger impact. He hasn't yet, but it's not so much that I'm not out on Ray Davis. It's just James Cook's been really good, and you're not taking James Cook off the field unless he gets tired or a situation calls for it. So that's not really an indictment on Ray. It's more of an endorsement for James Cook. But anyway, one last thing with the Bills. It's kind of under radar issue. I was going through some stats. I like to look at stats. Sometimes they don't mean nothing. Sometimes they do. Why have the Bills stunk this year on 3rd down? Both sides of the football. Defense in Houston, they allowed 8 of 16 3rd downs, 5 of 9 7 yards or longer. They're just 24th in the league this season on defensive stops, like under 44%. And then offensively, last year they were literally number one in the entire NFL, just under 50% last year. This year, just 32% of their first downs are converted or third downs, and they're 25th in the league. Both sides of the football. That hurts. Any idea why? I don't know. I mean, offensively, I guess you go to the receivers, defense injuries. I mean, that sounds the most logical, but they're not good on third downs this year at all.
It's not injuries though, because it goes all the way back to when Sean McDermott was calling the defensive plays. Heck, it goes back further than that. I remember, I mean, when I was writing game recaps for Buffalo Rumbling still, and I was just talking about how, the inevitable third and long conversion that they would get against the Sean McDermott defense or even a Leslie Frazier defense. Like, it always felt like they would play that really soft zone, like they would go up, even like you would see like Tremaine Edmonds say at the sticks, right? And then like, okay, completion in front of them and they got to go stop them. And then they end up like chasing them to the sideline and giving up the first down. So, I mean, this goes back with multiple players, with multiple even coordinators. And so for whatever reason, this Bills defense, and maybe it's the Sean McDermott of it all. I don't want to like throw him under the bus too much, but like if that bend and don't break stuff, like, they like to keep stuff in front of them and make tackles, but it doesn't always work when, you're standing at the sticks and you have to make a tackle. You have to come up and make a tackle and keep them short it's just like you have a little bit of a thin margin for error there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's frustrating to see, though, at this point. We got a couple of minutes left there. With the last few minutes, I kind of want to talk about the AFC East or just the AFC in general. My biggest takeaway from the Houston game, and it still is today as we talk, I am no longer focused on the conference. Like, I'm paying attention to what Kansas City does, but I'm not locked in on what Kansas City or Baltimore or Houston, what they're doing. For me, this year, keeping things realistic, I'm out on the Bills chasing the number one seed. I don't think it's going to happen. I just think there's too many flaws with this football team to have the best record in the conference. But it's all about the AFC East for me. I'm 100% locked in right now on the AFC East. That's the difference for me with the Bills between now and the last 3 or 4 years. I felt this was a team that might be the best in the conference record-wise. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. But like I've said several times during this show, I think they're the best team in this division. We're not even going to talk about the Patriots, but I think I still think they're toast. And I think the Jets, even with their change, I just don't think they're as good as the Bills, even though they got a lot of good players. Like, they got some top-heavy talent on their team for sure, but they got a lot of issues in the quarterback play between Josh Allen and this version of Aaron Rodgers, not the old MVP versions of them. The disparity is gaping. It's wide. It's huge. So that's my focus right now is on the AFC East. However, right before we taped, like I said, Robert Saleh gets fired. The Bills are playing on Monday night against the Jets in New Jersey. That change your mindset towards this game at all? I mean, typically a team will get a boost with a new head coach. However, you also typically come back from London and you still might have a little bit of sloppiness to you the next week. Like, what's your mindset right now with this game? Is the needle moved at all with you because of this head coaching change on a Tuesday morning?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes them much more dangerous on Monday night, the Jets, I mean. I think, they're, by all accounts, this defensive coordinator that they promoted is beloved in the locker room. They're going to want to prove that it was a mistake to fire Saleh. They're going to want to show ownership and the general manager and all that stuff that, it wasn't the players, it was all Saleh. So that's why you see that boost right after a guy gets fired like that. So I think you might see like the Jets defense come out and play with their hair on fire. Like, I'm worried about this game now, even if I'm not really worried about the Jets offense. And I'm not like, and yes, they're coming back without a bye week from London. And so like, obviously that's going to play into some of the sloppiness and, the jet lag and all that stuff. But like, I'm genuinely, I wasn't scared about this game. I thought the Bills were going to win against the Jets. And now it's like more of a toss up for me because of the firing news.
Yeah, it's going to be an emotional lift for sure. And I think they know their season's on the line. They're 2-3. If you lose to Buffalo at home, you're 2-4. You're 2 games behind the Bills, and you've lost to them already at home. I wouldn't say the division hopes are over, but they're on life support if you lose this game, if you are the Jets. Yeah, I'm always worried about the Jets defense. Look, the Bills don't play well in New Jersey, period. I don't give a shit who the coach is or who the quarterback is. So it's worrisome. I've had this game scheduled before the 3-game road trip. I considered Baltimore and Houston opportunities. Yeah, obviously you want to win those games, but if you don't, you don't. But it's the Jets game. That tells you a lot. You can make a big, big statement. One way or the other, the Bills are going to make a statement on Monday night. I don't know what that statement's going to be yet, but they are making a statement. Whether they win or lose, we'll find out. In terms of the rest of the AFC, I can't believe Cincinnati's 1-4.
Yeah,
That's nuts, dude. They're good, but you want to get to 10 wins. There's only 12 games left. You got to go 9-3 right now the rest of the way just to get to 10 wins, which doesn't even guarantee you. It probably get you in, but it doesn't guarantee you a wild card spot. The Bengals, despite being a really good team, their defense blows and they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but I mean, you were talking about how you don't think the Bills are candidates for the 1 seed or whatever. I don't know if that's necessarily true. The Chiefs have been like using smoke and mirrors to get to 5-0. The Texans we just saw. I mean, they haven't looked great this year. Even in their wins, they haven't looked great. Yes, they've been pulling them out, which you have to give them credit for. Sure. But then you've got like the Steelers at 3-2. Hell, the Denver Broncos are in playoff position right now. The Ravens look really good, but they also like lost to the Raiders. So there's obviously warts on all of these. There's warts on all these AFC teams, and we'll see how it shakes out. Like the Chiefs in their next, I think, 5 games have the 49ers, the Bills, and somebody else. Who are they playing? I wish I knew their schedule better. But there's another team in there that they can definitely lose to. So, I don't necessarily think that anything's out of the question this early. The Bills are inconsistent, but so are the Chiefs and Texans and Steelers and Broncos and Ravens and you could go through the whole list.
In fairness with the Chiefs, you're right. But the Chiefs find ways to win football games. Like the Chiefs win that game on Sunday in Houston. Somehow, some way, they're going to win that game. It's just, to me, that's a big difference. All right, so anyway, because you said that, I got intrigued. Well, the Chiefs are on a bye this week. And then they're at Frisco. They're at Vegas, Tampa Bay, Denver. Denver is tough. Denver plays the Chiefs tough, and Denver is a much better team right now than people give them credit for. And then they're at Buffalo. So yeah, that's their next slew of games. You could say there's definitely 3 toughies in there, for sure. And then later in the season, I'm looking now. They got the Chargers, but that's at home. They got Houston, but that's at home. They're at Pittsburgh. They're at Denver still. Look, things can change quickly. And Pat Mahomes has not been good this season, which is scary because it hasn't mattered. They're still 5-0. Pat Mahomes is off to the worst statistical start of his entire career, and they're still 5-0. They're just a team that finds a way. But you're partial. I mean, I do agree with you. Maybe it's a little early. We're 5 weeks in. The Bills are 3-2. Ravens got 2 losses. The Texans got 2 losses. And the Bills play the Chiefs, so they can get a win and get a tiebreaker when they play them in Buffalo. So, yeah, for me to concede the AFC is a little premature and stupid on my end. I just don't look at this roster right now and think it's the team that's going to have the best record. However, you go get Amari Cooper or Jacoby Myers or Deontay Johnson, I might change my mind. But we'll see. This is going to be a big week. I'm looking forward to talking to you following this game because I think we're going to have a much more clear understanding of what this team is, I think, based on this game, if that makes sense. They weren't the juggernaut that they look like when they're 3-0. They're also not a team that season is on the brink at 3-2 either, after 2 tough road losses against 2 good teams. But this is a divisional game, prime time, against a team that I still say 1-53, they're better than on paper. But a new coach for the Jets. So we'll see, buddy. I'm nervous too now. You got me nervous. All right, guys.
It just feels like a toss-up. Yeah.
It does. No, it does feel like a toss-up right now. What's the line on this game? I don't know. I'm not going to look till tomorrow. Maybe the coach moves the line a little bit. We'll see. Anyway, make sure if you're not already doing so, you follow Matt on Twitter at MattRichWarren. Of course, SB Nation all your football needs right there. Again, looking forward to talking to you next week, man, after a big game. Thank you, man. Appreciate you as always.
Talk to you soon.
All right, guys, and I will be back with a brand new episode tomorrow. Talk to you then.